Don't Depend on Daddy is an unfiltered safe space, empowering young professionals to build independence in their 20s and beyond, whether it be personal, professional, or financial. Regardless of your age, relationship status, or job title, the most consistent person in your life is you. So join me and let's build our independence together. Enjoy! Hello and welcome to Don't Depend on Daddy, the podcast. My name's Michaela. I am your host. It's been a minute since I've sat down at the mic. I've been in a really good work routine over the last couple of weeks where I actually have been bulk recording a lot of these podcast episodes every other week. Gives me a break from sitting behind the camera, but also when I get into the zone, I am in the zone and I feel like it's making these episodes a lot better. Anyways, I'm excited to sit down and chat with you today. We are going to be talking about my food philosophy, how I stick to a grocery budget, how I approach meal planning and meal prepping, what I eat, all those kinds of things. I have gotten a handful of questions about this. Just because if you follow me on my personal Instagram, it's Michaela_Alaka with 2 A's at the end. I recently shared that I started to eat fish. We'll get into this whole story, but the TLDR is I was a vegan for 9 years. And in 2025, I've slowly started to change that. I don't think I'll ever eat meat again. It's not really on my agenda, but I have been really enjoying fish. Anyways, I'm getting so sidetracked. Before we get into the bulk of the episode, I'm going to, as always, very quickly run through my usual housekeeping. So first things first, if you are new here, welcome. You can use the code podcast1 to get $10 off the Personal Finance Dashboard. The Personal Finance Dashboard is my signature money management tool. It's a tool that I used to grow my net worth from negative $30,000 to over $1 million. Woo, we hit that milestone this year. And if you are someone who is very serious about managing your money, controlling your spending, growing your net worth, paying off debt, hitting your savings goals, and you want 2026 to be your best financial year, you need the Personal Finance Dashboard. So you can use the code podcast1. Also, as a precursor, at the end of November, the Personal Finance Dashboard in all of my templates will be going on sale for Black Friday. I'm going to have a few bundles going on, but everything will be 25% off. So if you want to wait for that sale, also go ahead and wait. But if you want to get it now, you can use the code podcast1. The difference is $5 in the sale price, unless you wait and get a bundle, in which case I'm going to be bundling together like the Personal Finance Dashboard, my year-end financial review masterclass, which I'm going to be rerunning a bunch of live sessions again this year. So if you're unsure, just stay tuned for the Black Friday stuff. It's going to be really fun. Plus, I'm making the new version of the PFD too. I actually hired someone who is going to help me with that, or he is helping me with it. So anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. Next, if you are someone who is looking to just build out a budget, maybe you want a tool where you can start tracking your expenses and kind of keep it just to that, I'd recommend the basic budgeting template. It's a bit of a more simplified tool compared to the Personal Finance Dashboard, really meant for you to track your expenses and get in the habit of having a budget and checking a budget. And then if you want to take it to the next level, that's when I would recommend you upgrade it to the Personal Finance Dashboard. And last but not least, my Financial Independence Planner. This is a new tool as of this year. And honestly, it's my favorite tool I've ever made. I think it's so valuable in really understanding your long-term financial direction. So one of my most frequently asked questions is, how much should I be saving for retirement? And what this tool is going to do is help you map out how much to put towards retirement each year based off of your specific goals. So if you want to retire in your 60s, it will give you those targets. You may not need to max out your 401k every year based off of your goals. You may have room to deploy that money towards other things. If you are someone, maybe you want to retire early or you want to go work optional, which is something that I'm aspiring to, this planner can also help you map out what steps you need to take in order to reach those specific targets. So I highly recommend checking that out. Again, all of these are going to be on sale for Black Friday. I'm going to be doing all types of bundles and whatnot. So if you want to wait until Black Friday. Make sure you're clued in on my Break Your Budget Instagram, because that's where all the information is going to be, as well as my newsletter, which is always linked in the show notes. So with that, let's move on to the bulk of today's episode, which is how I approach healthy eating with a budget in mind. I get a lot of questions about how I stick to my grocery budget, how I eat healthy in the work. So I really thought it would be fun to do a full deep dive on my general philosophy around food and like how I approach it, especially as someone who is very cognizant of eating healthy. This year, I've been on a bit of a protein journey because I'm doing a little bit of a mini body recomp, which I've talked about in prior episodes. I'm finally starting to see some progress with that, which is really exciting. So before we get into it, I'm going to do a, trigger warning here because I know that food is a sensitive topic for people. So if talking about diets or being on a different diet is something that you don't like to hear about, then here's your sign to not listen to this episode. I have tons of other great ones. But if you're someone who doesn't care, then let's get right into it. This is how this episode is going to work. What I eat and my food philosophy is where we will start, and then I'll get into how I stick to my grocery budget, which I do actually have a full grocery YouTube video, so you should check that out. It's a series that I've been meaning to make, so I'm gonna have to record another one of those. I think it would be fun to do a YouTube video about like what I buy in a week and then also what I'm cooking all week. I just got to find a blank week to actually film that. So I'll do another one at some point. But in the meantime, check out the one that I've already filmed. If you're on here on YouTube, I'll try to link it up in the show notes. And then also we'll talk about how I meal prep and like think about the weekends. I did my best to sort of sort this out in a nice, easy to flow way. So hopefully I cover all of the questions that you have. But if you do also have additional questions, let me know. Okay, we'll kick things off here with my food philosophy. So I feel like my philosophy around how I eat, how I choose to eat has evolved a ton throughout my adult life. If you didn't know, I eat a predominantly plant-based diet. I went fully vegan back in 2016, so my senior year or my junior year of college, going into my senior year, over 9 years ago. Pretty much cold turkey. And usually people ask me, if this was for health or if it was for ethics. And originally it was for ethics. I actually watched the Forks Over Knives documentary and it was very upsetting. And then the next day, that was it for me. And then I got down the rabbit hole in terms of the health of it all. I read Dr. McGregor's book. It's called How Not to Die. And he talks a lot about the science of incorporating more plant-based foods into your diet and how it can help with longevity and disease prevention. And again, this was back in like 2016, 2017. So it wasn't really as well known. And so everybody thought that I was a lunatic. But now I'm happy that in 2025, I know again, like people have their thoughts and opinions on being vegan. You're welcome to have that. But now I feel like people really recognize the value of eating for longevity and like truly understand why plant-based diets can be beneficial depending on your personal preferences and goals and body and whatever. But I will say now that it's been so long since I made that decision, I can genuinely say that my choice to remain largely and predominantly plant-based is for health and how I feel. And there's more to the story, so let's start at the beginning. As most people do, I struggled with my weight in college. I wasn't overweight by any means. I was drinking a lot though, which is what you do in college. And I feel like generally I was just not eating entirely balanced. And so, as I mentioned, at the end of my junior year, I decided to start eating a plant-based diet. And initially, I think just because of the increased fiber intake, which is a very important thing to focus on, it helped a lot with bloating and digestion. I felt a lot more energetic and I just felt better. And I will say, like pretty confidently, I have not been bloated since 2016 because when you eat a plant-based diet, you get so much fiber without even really trying. Like I don't really have any digestive issues. And I do feel like it's helped a lot with clearing my skin and keeping my skin clear, which I've talked about in prior episodes. But eating plant-based helped so much. Like the change in how I felt in terms of feeling bloated, feeling backed up or whatever, and my digestion overall was so significant when I went plant-based and started eating more fibrous foods on a consistent basis. And I have felt so much better on the daily, literally ever since, almost to the point where it's like, I don't really see why I would ever stray away from that. Anyways, I really do think that changing my diet to a plant-based diet helped me build a good relationship with food as I moved into adulthood because it forces you to eat more vegetables and just stay healthier. And it also focuses more on volume. And I do feel like, especially for women, but I know men struggle with this too, we get sort of wrapped up in amounts of food and portion sizes and stuff. And I do feel like eating plant based, I really never have to think about or worry about portions because, again, it's more voluminous food. So, like, you just fill up. And so, overall, it's helped a lot with my skin, which I mentioned has a lot to do, I think, with digestion and just generally getting more nutrients in compared to how I was living before. I never ate really unhealthily before, like, I've always been interested in it. But the switch, because it was so dramatic, honestly, really changed a lot of things for me very quickly. I stuck with being plant based and vegan, really. I was vegan for many, many years. I would say up until like 2 years ago, I very slowly started just getting a little bit more flexible with the things that I would eat. So I would eat like baked goods if it had eggs in it, or, if I was served something at a restaurant with cheese, I wouldn't send it back, like stuff like that. Like I started incorporating small bits of non-plant based foods like eggs, a little bit of dairy into my diet, but really only outside of the house. And I will say that in LA, being plant based was especially fantastic because there's so many different like vegan restaurants, everything there. There's always a plant based option and it's usually pretty good. I will say though, over the last year or so, I have been craving just a little bit more flexibility in my diet, especially when I'm out socially with friends and also when I'm dating. Not to say that those things influence my behavior or that I would change my diet for anyone except for myself, but I did find that in my own life, I just wanted to be more flexible with what I was eating. And I will say, obviously, to no surprise, being plant-based is limiting in social settings. And I found that this was always like the most annoying thing to me. Other people would make it a big deal when I didn't draw attention to it. Like, and I do think it came from a good place of like always wanting to make sure there was something for me to eat, but it was almost to a fault where it's like I'm an adult and I can figure it out and I don't need other people drawing attention to something. And honestly, I just kind of got a little bit sick of it. And so this year specifically, I have very, very slowly, and this has been a big mental block for me because, again, when I think back to the ethics, it has been very challenging. I have decided to incorporate fish back into my diet. It's been a slow roll. I felt very intimidated by it, to be honest, because it has been so long. I wasn't sure if I was going to like it. I wasn't sure if it was going to make me sick. I actually had a friend, my roommate in LA, when I had a roommate, her name's Kelsey. She's also vegan or was also vegan. And she came to visit me in Chicago back in March, and she had also slowly started to incorporate a little fish into her diet. And so we went out to dinner and we got salmon, and that was kind of like my first integration back into having it. And I will say, like, it was very helpful to do that with somebody else who like understands. And it didn't make me sick, and it didn't, cause any problems with my skin. That's what I was worried about too, of like, is this going to give me zits? Because if it is, it's not worth it. I have spent so much time clearing my skin, and so far I have not had any issues, knock on wood. And over the course, I would say, of the last couple of months, a little bit in Japan, I had some fish, I tried sushi, like I've started to order it at restaurants. And then over the summer, I really started exploring it again with all types of fish beyond just like salmon, which is really all I had until I would say like July. I had lobster over the summer, I had crab cakes, I had oysters, I've had a little bit of sushi. And now I have started to slowly cook fish at home. I have salmon that I got at Whole Foods frozen. I don't think I'll cook anything else at home quite yet, but we'll get there maybe. So I will say, I guess you could call me pescatarian, but I really don't like that term. I actually prefer vegetarian who sometimes eats fish, because I won't say that like as a blanket statement that I'll just eat fish whenever. Like it has to be specifically what I want, and I have to specifically be in the mood for it. So I still call myself a vegetarian, and I'll continue to call myself a vegetarian because I really, I eat fish mostly in social settings, but occasionally at home. Occasionally. I'm still getting used to it and like figuring out what to buy, how to cook it. It's a bit of a relearning curve because I literally, as an adult, have not had this, so I didn't know how to shop for it. Like, it just has been a big change, but a welcome change, and one that I do feel really good on, especially as I, again, am on this more fitness journey, trying to eat a little bit more protein. Like, I can only eat so much tofu. So otherwise, I still eat plant-based. I will cook with non-plant-based ingredients if I'm with other people. And as I mentioned, I'll eat stuff that might have eggs or dairy in it and like baked goods and such, but I mostly don't buy it and I don't eat it or have it alone. So I guess the long story long here is when I'm cooking at home for myself alone, which is most of the time, I'm eating plant-based because it makes me feel the best and it's where I am most comfortable. But if I'm having friends over, going over to someone else's house in a social setting like a Friendsgiving or something, like I'll have, so long as it doesn't have meat in it, I'll kind of eat whatever. And if I'm going out, like I went out last week with some friends and we all ordered sushi and split it, like I'm flexible now in that way. And it has been so freeing and so wonderful and really, really, really fun, honestly. Like it just feels so good to not have to think about it or worry about it in that way. And so I feel really good lately. I feel like I'm in a good place to get enough protein and stay full. I'm able to eat enough, which has always been a challenge for me. Like I think with eating plant-based, there were periods where I struggled to eat enough. I actually have, I would say, the opposite of food noise because I have such severe anxiety and a little bit of OCD, which I've talked about and I am working on. But I often forget to eat, not intentionally. And so I do feel like incorporating fish and a little bit more of this has made it easier for me to get enough food in, to be completely honest, especially with the amount that I'm working out. I feel like I can cook and have more flexibility with what I make, and I can have more flexibility when I go out, which is great. As I mentioned to you, I used to be really concerned about my skin, and that was one of the biggest drivers behind changing my diet. But I do feel like I now have my skincare routine pretty dialed in. My skin feels good with my current diet. I've noticed no negative changes, even from having dairy. Granted, I'm not like eating ice cream and glasses of milk and whatnot, but I've had pizza here or there, and like I haven't noticed any, again, knock on wood, I haven't noticed any breakouts as a result of that. And I do think that it's because of my topical skincare routine and also just like in general still eating healthy. I definitely had a couple of identity panics when I first started eating fish, but I do think it's normal to change how you eat and to try new things and to listen to your body and do what feels best for you. So I would encourage that if you're someone who's maybe been on I don't want to say a strict diet, but maybe you associate with being plant-based or a vegetarian, or you are eating a predominantly carnivore diet. Like it can be really easy to get stuck in this one path. But if your body is craving something else or you mentally are craving something else, like I think it's okay to explore. You just kind of have to do it slowly. It's totally fine to change your mind. I've said this before, I'll say it again. In this space, like I'm very open to changing my mind. I'm very open to other people's opinions, feedback, and hopefully my podcast here helps you with feeling okay with that, because I do think it's normal to change your mind. I think it's normal for your opinions and stuff to evolve in all areas, but I know diet is something that's very like emotional. People feel very strongly about. So I'm very comfortable with this type of change, which is something I didn't used to feel. And I do think it could be a bigger sign that like the 2025 has been a big healing year for me unexpectedly, especially from like a mental health standpoint. Like I do think that this change has been very positive for me with my mental health. So anyways, that's my overall food philosophy. Could change. I don't know. We'll see. I'll let you know if there's any material changes. Like I mentioned, I don't think I'll ever eat meat again. It's something I'm really not interested in at all. Fish, I've warmed up to, as I said, and I think I'm comfortable there for now. Okay, now let's pivot into how I shop and plan my meals for the week. As I said earlier, I do have a YouTube video about this, which I recommend you check out because it goes into a lot of detail, but I'll run through it as well here. I follow what I call the 3-2-1 method for grocery shopping and meal planning. And this is something that I totally made up. I hadn't seen anyone say anything about this before. I won't claim that it's like an original idea, but this is what I follow based off of like something that I made up in my head. And it's where I plan out 3 dinners, 2 lunches, and 1 breakfast for the week. And there are a couple of reasons why I really like this particular strategy, we'll call it. First is that it's very structured, which I find whenever I do planning, I'm a structure person. Like, I really do need a structure to follow. And it's also like why all my episodes are broken up into segments and why my content is broken up into, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, I'm a structure person. I like having a framework. Second is that it allows me to stretch my meals throughout the week enough where I don't feel like I need to cook all day, every day. So, for example, like I'll cook dinner or something on Monday and I'll eat the leftovers on Tuesday. I'll cook Wednesday, I'll eat the leftovers on Thursday. Like, it sounds simple and it is, but it does require kind of finding that right rhythm based off of your specific schedule. And third is I still feel like I'm able to get enough diversity into my diet. So I'm not bored or feeling like I'm eating the same meals over and over again, which I do a lot of that. Like, I do eat a lot of the same things over and over again, but I cook enough of different meals where it doesn't get boring and monotonous. And even if I have, 2 baseline meals that I default back to on a pretty weekly basis, I'm also integrating something different week over week to just spice things up. And I do think it's also easier in the fall. Like, fall and winter cooking is easier for me. Anyways, let's get into more of the mechanics. So we'll start off with breakfast since that's generally the easiest. I usually have oatmeal for breakfast, and this stays the same week to week. Like, I'm an oatmeal gal. I love it. Good fiber, easy to doctor up, inexpensive, and consistent. And I do also think if you work in an office, you need to bring breakfast. Like, oatmeal is a great one. When I was working in an office pre-COVID, I literally kept a box of oatmeal at my desk, and in the morning, like I kept a bowl, a spoon, and oatmeal. I would make my oatmeal. I'd bring a banana. I kept peanut butter in my desk too, double check, make sure people don't have allergies, whatever. And I would make my oatmeal in the office. They had a microwave there, and it was the best. It was super easy and, again, very inexpensive. So I think it's a great option if you are someone who works in an office or, you need to take your food to go. Generally speaking, I'll have oatmeal. I'll put in a scoop of protein powder. I like the Orgain protein powder. I usually have been going through like 1 container of that per month. I just do 1 scoop per day in my oatmeal. And then a banana or blueberries, and then always a little bit of peanut butter. Sometimes I do overnight oats. So I'll add in some chia seeds and a little bit of almond milk, and I'll eat it cold. But mostly it's just hot oatmeal. I do the microwave kind. Like, I'm not overcomplicating anything. It fills me up, it's healthy, and honestly, I really never get sick of it. I've been having oatmeal for breakfast for like so many years. It's the best. I could not recommend it enough because it doesn't require cooking. And again, it can be doctored up however you like it. When it comes to breakfast, though, I recommend finding what your default breakfast is and just trying to stick to it. Like, it could be oatmeal, it could be a yogurt bowl, it could be eggs, whatever. But to me, this is the easiest week over week, like choosing your breakfast and sticking to it. For example, like if you're someone who likes to do eggs or egg sandwiches, you can just prep those and freeze them and then heat them up day to day, especially too if you have to get into an office for work. Anyways, next is lunch, obviously. For lunch, I try to have stuff prepared more in bulk because usually for lunch, if I don't have something prepared, I just end up forgetting about lunch. Like I mentioned, I kind of that's a problem that I've been working on, which is why I prepare things. So usually, for example, I'll make like a dense bean salad. So if you follow Violet Witchell on TikTok, she came up with this dense bean salad. And basically it's like a bunch of beans and a flavor and whatever, and it's just easy to eat all week long. I always have bread prepared so I can make sandwiches or toast or something. I don't want to feel like I have to do a ton of cooking for lunch. And like I said, if I don't have anything prepared, I tend to skip it, which is an issue. But I'll cook 2 lunches, and that's generally enough to get me Monday through Friday. I feel like on the weekends, which we'll talk about, my eating schedule shifts a little bit. And then third, let's get into dinners. So I do have a few default dinners that I love, and I'll usually cook one of these a week. I love a teriyaki tofu or lately a teriyaki salmon bowl. I like the Japanese barbecue sauce. I get it at Aldi. Adding salmon is new, as you know. I bought the wild caught salmon fillets from Whole Foods. I think it came with like 7 or 8 and it was like $30 or something. So I've been having one like every 2 weeks or so, and that feels good for me right now. Otherwise, I really like when I'm cooking with tofu, I really like cooking the high protein tofu from Trader Joe's or the super, super, super extra firm protein from Whole Foods, the 365 brand. Tofu also too, like if you're on a budget, it's great. It's just you have to learn how to cook it. Um, Another rotation meal for me is like a tofu scramble or chili. I love a chili. It's so easy and it's so easy to freeze. And I make chili a lot, honestly, in the fall because I do feel like it serves really well for lunch and dinner. So it kind of just like bridges the gap throughout the week. For most of the dinners that I do make, I'll buy enough ingredients to stretch it for 2 meals. So, for example, like if I'm only cooking 3 distinct dinners, I'll double up one night so that I can reheat the leftovers for the next day. Or if I'm doing chili or soup, like I mentioned, I'll usually have that for dinners and then I'll also mix it in or doctor it up for a lunch. So that's how I think about meal planning. It's not perfect every week. Like I don't follow this prescriptively, but it does help a lot with conceptualizing meal planning and not thinking that I have to plan out 5 lunches and 5 dinners and 5 breakfasts, which honestly feels very overwhelming to me and very expensive. The other thing too that I like to do is generally think about like a flavor theme. So, like, for example, if I'm going to be doing chili, then for dinners, I may choose a more like Mexican or Spanish theme, and I'll do tacos one night, and then I'll do taco bowls a different night, like just so that I can reuse and repurpose the ingredients that I'm buying. So I'm not going from all different types of cuisines day after day after day, where when I go to the store, I have to buy all these different types of things, if that makes sense. So that's how I plan out my meals. That's how I think about things. Once I have my meals identified, I'll review what I already have in my pantry and I'll use that to build out my grocery list. I've been shopping twice a week, so I don't really do one big haul just because living in the city, since I don't have a car and I don't have a very big refrigerator, it just doesn't really work. But twice a week has been working really well for me, and I'll make my list and I stick to it at the store. And then throughout the week, if I notice I need something or maybe I run out of something that I don't have to regularly buy, like oatmeal or peanut butter or protein powder or rice or something, I'll always add that to my ongoing list. I just do it in the Notes app on my phone. I'm also not loyal to a specific store, but I do prefer going to Whole Foods when I'm in the area. The challenge is like the Whole Foods, there's 2 Whole Foods in my general vicinity, but they're both like a mile away in either direction. So if I'm over there, I'll stop in and pick up a few random things that like maybe I need, but I am not able to go there as much just because it's hard to like lug your groceries that far. Otherwise, I alternate between Aldi, which is very okay, but good for certain things. I don't really like the produce at Aldi. I find it goes bad really quickly. Or Jewel Osco, which is like the chain that's local to Chicago. Sometimes too, I go to Trader Joe's, but similar to Whole Foods, it's kind of far away. I don't like the produce at Trader Joe's, so I find that I rarely go there. I also like don't really like frozen food, not to be annoying, but like I'm not enticed by the frozen meals at Trader Joe's. Like there really isn't anything there with the exception of their high protein tofu, which when I go to Trader Joe's, I'll buy like 10 of them. That I need to get there. So if I walk by one, I'll pop in, but I'm not really seeking it out. Usually I'm doing Aldi or Jewel Osco, or sometimes I do Whole Foods delivery. Okay, so that is the general food philosophy, how I plan my meals. And now let's pivot into how I do meal prepping and think about that. So I don't really do a ton of meal prepping, if I'm being honest, because I'm afraid to get botulism. So botulism is like a bacterial infection. So like if you refrigerate your food, one time I said that I meal prepped rice on Instagram and someone was like, multiple people actually were like, you're never, ever, ever supposed to cook and reheat rice because you could get botulism. And I went down the rabbit hole and looked into it, and now I'll never do that. It might be my OCD, I'm not sure, but the only things that I really ever pre-cook would be like a chili or a soup, and I usually freeze some of it right away because I just don't like, I don't know, it kind of weirds me out. So I guess what I'm trying to say is like I'll cook a bulk meal and I'll eat it the next day, but I'm not someone who's, if you've seen online people who will spend all Sunday like meal prepping and then portioning out their meals Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then, by Friday, that meal's been sitting in the fridge all week. Like, I don't do that. But if I cook something, I'm usually eating it to completion the next day. What I do like to do though at the top of the week is cut up and prep my vegetables. So like I'll buy a head of broccoli, I'll buy a bunch of zucchini. I hate chopping and I have to do it every day if I don't meal prep it. So I find that doing it at the front of the week helps a lot with just speed of cooking, getting things done faster, having a better gauge of what vegetables I have. And also I feel like the vegetables last a little bit longer and then they're also easier to freeze. If I find that maybe they've been in the fridge for a minute and I'm not going to get to them, I'll just toss them in a Ziploc baggie and I'll throw them in the freezer. The last thing here too that I want to touch on are the weekends, because I know that weekends with eating and cooking and grocery shopping can be a challenge just because maybe you're eating out a little bit more or you're kind of at the end of your groceries and you don't want to go back to the store for a full shop quite yet. I find that I don't really eat out all that often. I eat out probably once a week. But if I do, it's over the weekend. And so usually I plan over the weekend, one of my meals will be eaten out, whether it's lunch or dinner. It's rarely more than that. But if it is, obviously, like, great, that means I'm doing stuff. So over the weekends, usually on Thursday or Friday, I would say generally like Thursday, is when I do my second grocery trip, and I'll just buy any small things to either round out the meal plan that I had put out for the week or little things to help stretch some of the ingredients that I already had to get me to Monday, which is when I do my second shop. So usually I shop on Mondays and I'll shop on Thursdays or Fridays. And I'm finding that this cadence works very well for me. So if you get to the weekend and you're like, I have no food, consider, it sounds simple, and it is, going back to the store. Or when you're planning out your weeks, instead of doing 3-2-1, you could do like 4-3-2 or something if you are a once a week grocery shopper, and just incorporate one more meal where you're actually thinking about the weekends. Because I feel like when it comes to meal prepping and planning, like we're only thinking Monday through Friday when we're working or going into an office, and the weekends tend to be a free-for-all, and it doesn't have to be that way. Like, it's totally fine to have a couple of things prepped. I also really enjoy cooking on the weekends because it feels like there's less of a rush. Like on a Saturday night, my ideal is cooking a nice meal, watching a show, and going to bed early. So who am I? This is 30. One other thing too that I want to touch on before we start wrapping up here is becoming an ingredient household. So over the last few years, as I've lived alone, I have made a very big effort to become an ingredient household and cook as much as I possibly can from scratch. So this 100% helps me save money at the grocery store. It's healthier. It's something I recommend you do if you enjoy cooking and want to be mindful about it. So what do I mean by being an ingredient household? Basically, anything that I can cook from scratch, I do. So this includes breads. I'll talk about that in a second. Obviously, like baked goods and whatnot, sauces, dips, soups, anything. Like, I don't really go out and buy pre-made food. I don't buy a lot of frozen food, the exception being like the fish, as I mentioned, because that kind of needs to be frozen unless you're eating it that same day. And if I am going to freeze stuff, it's stuff that I've made, again, from scratch. Like, I would rather spend a little bit more time making something fully from all of the ingredients as opposed to buying pre-done or pre-made things or bagged things or frozen things. So each week I bake a loaf of sourdough. I have a sourdough starter. I got my starter off of TikTok shop from the Southern Sourdough Co. Her name's Eve, the sourdough starter, if you're looking online. It's been the best thing ever. This is something that I highly recommend you learn how to do. I feel like the process feels more intimidating than it actually is. I do have on my personal Instagram a few recipe videos, but honestly, like, I'm not the best resource for it. I would recommend looking up real sourdough bakers on TikTok, because the process, once you learn the process, it's very simple. Bread is very expensive, and it's so much more delicious when you make it yourself. The other benefit of bread, of having a sourdough starter and like learning how to use it, is you can make so many different types of things. So like I've made English muffins, I make bagels, I use it to make pizza dough. I use it to make sandwich bread. I make sourdough bread. I use it to make loaves of like pumpkin or banana bread and stuff like that. Like it's just such a versatile ingredient and a versatile thing to have. And so I definitely recommend, if you are someone who wants to start doing more cooking and making things from scratch, like getting a sourdough starter and really learning the process and taking the time to learn the process, I think is a very valuable thing to do. I also think as we go into the winter, it's a really great hobby to have. It's not expensive and it will save you money long term. I also make all of my sauces and dressings from scratch. So for every couple of weeks, I'll make like a big pot of pasta sauce and I'll freeze individual portions in little Ziploc baggies. I freeze them flat so that I can just pull them out of the freezer if I want to make pasta. I make all my salad dressings and stuff from scratch, and I use those throughout the week as well. Sauces as much as I can. The only one I don't make from scratch, which honestly I probably could, is the Japanese barbecue sauce. I have to look at what's in there. But I do my best in general to make the stuff that is traditionally more expensive at the store on my own. It really has been a fun journey and it saves me money. It also sort of helps you learn what ingredients go together, how to cook, how to get confident with creating your own recipes or cooking something and really just going off of taste. I will say it takes a little bit to build up your pantry to have like enough oils and vinegars and spices and ingredients to actually be able to just open up your pantry and pull and make something together. But don't rush the process. Like as you find a new recipe, get the ingredients and you'll be able to repurpose things. They last a while. So it's not like you have to go and buy all the new ingredients every single time. But I do think that being an ingredient household is something that will make the process of cooking and meal prepping easier and more enjoyable. And it happens kind of slowly over time. Like I would say over the last 2-ish years, I've slowly become an ingredient household and I've really found the joy in making things myself. Also, like it tastes way better when you do it yourself, 100% of the time. Anyways, that is all I've got for my food philosophy, my meal prep, how I think about sticking to a budget. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope it was insightful. If you have opinions, tips, advice on more ways that I could save or things that you do maybe at home that help you save on your grocery bill, feel free to leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you, and I'm sure other listeners would love to hear from you too. And with that, I will catch you in the next one. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to leave me a review. Make sure to follow me on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. And if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you next week.